Hello, everyone, and welcome to SCORE Fairfield County's live webinar on understanding credit as a business owner in an uncertain world. I'm Tim Ryan, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I'll be your host. This webinar is being done in collaboration with the Monroe Chamber of Commerce and the Monroe Library. I see Beth Stoller from the Chamber is with us. Beth, do you want to say a few words?
Absolutely. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm Beth Stoller, Operations and Event Manager for the Monroe Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Monroe Chamber, the Edith Wheeler Memorial Library, and SCORE, I'd like to thank you for attending today's Lunch and Learn. For over 4 years, we three organizations have come together to bring you great business-driven topics to help you to learn and grow as business professionals. Before I speak about today's event, I want to ask you to mark your calendars now for the next date. The last one for this year will be Tuesday afternoon, December 7th. The speaker for this Lunch and Learn will be Scott Gombar, who is an IT professional for over 20 years, and he's done numerous webinars and seminars on cybersecurity, phishing, ransomware. Scott is going to be coming to us to talk about your passwords. His title of the presentation is Your Password Sucks, How 99% of Data Breaches Could Have Been Prevented. So remember, Tuesday, December 7th at noon. And then back to today. Today's speaker, Stephen Roberts, I met many years ago in my networking days in BNI. And when you meet a great subject matter expert, you keep them in your context. Credit is such an important topic for us all. And I'm looking forward to hearing the tips that Stephen will be providing us so that we can understand better how to use our credit scores. So for now, I will turn it back over to Tim. Thank you very much. And I'm excited to hear what Stephen has to say.
Thanks, Beth. Our speaker today, as she said, is Stephen Robert. More on Stephen in just a minute. First, some brief info on SCORE. There's over 11,000 volunteers in about 300 offices nationwide. We're part of the Small Business Administration. SCORE Fairfield County has over 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer 3 primary evaluated services to small business owners. First, free one-on-one counseling. Second, educational workshops and webinars, over 150 per year. And third, extensive resources on our website, including Word and Excel templates to help you build your business plan. Some useful information about today's event. If you have any questions, please use the chat window at any time during the presentation. It is located in the lower part of your screen. Our webinar will end at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next couple of days. Now our speaker. Stephen Robert is the owner of Bedrock Credit and has been helping audiences understand credit for the past 14 years. As a credit expert, he has reviewed thousands of credit reports throughout his career. His experience, along with training from John Ulzheimer, formerly of Equifax and FICO, led him to become a leader in the credit education and restoration industry. Stephen has worked hand in hand with individuals to help them recognize and correct their credit issues. Now I'll turn it over to Stephen. Stephen, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Tim. And thank you very much, Beth. Pleasure to be here. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I have a new office set up, but hopefully it works well. If you guys have any questions throughout this presentation, I really would like you to put them in the chat. I don't sit here and just present. I like to make this very conversational. I want you to ask me questions. I'm going to be asking you questions, more hypothetical questions, things you can kind of think about in your mind as we go through things. So just anytime you guys have a situation or something that I've mentioned that you want me to go into a little bit deeper or a specific situation, please feel free to just throw it in the chat and I'll be happy to address it. As Tim said, my name is Stephen Robert. I'm the owner of Bedrock Credit. And yes, for the past 14 years, I've been doing credit education and restoration, teaching people and working with individuals about how credit works and putting them in a position where they can go and get whatever financing needs that they have. Working with John Ulzheimer, who worked at Equifax and FICO, gave me a wealth of knowledge and understanding. So not only do I have the experience of looking at thousands of credit reports throughout my career, but also working with John and seeing kind of a peek behind the curtain about how the systems were built and what they're all about really gave me the ability to help people in the best way possible. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of dive right into it and talk about the biggest thing that I hear on a daily basis, which is I know my credit score, but when I went in to get any type of financing, whether it was a mortgage, a business loan, an auto loan, or whatever, it was completely different than what this third-party website gave me. What is going on with that? And the reason that I bring that up is because most people not realizing that they, when they go to these third-party websites, there's so much different information that gets compiled on a third-party website versus when you go and actually apply for some type of serious financing. And the biggest reason for that is because there's lots of different scoring models out there in the world. So I don't have very many slides today because I like to do just kind of more conversational, but I am going to flip over to this slide because I think it's really important to understand there's a significant difference between credit scores, which can be put together by any company that is out there, as well as FICO scores, which is, again, what the lenders are going to be using for any type of major financing purposes. So what are the differences? Okay, those other scores can be put together by any company that wants to go out there and build their own scoring model. Beth could go build her own scoring model tomorrow and call it Beth's scoring model. And if she's good enough at marketing, she's going to be able to get lots of people to start paying attention to that and start giving out all these numbers. The problem with that is that's only what Beth's interpretation of that data is, but lenders aren't actually using that same interpretation. Also, when any type of company goes and builds their own scoring model, they have to purchase the data from the credit bureaus. And in order to do that, it costs a lot of money. So in general, you're going to see a lot of those third-party websites only giving 2 years worth of history, as well as having random score ranges, anywhere from 100 to 1,000 points, and really just kind of giving you not the most accurate information in terms of is it covering all the data that we need, as well as are those scores actually going to be helpful to being able to use them in any type of real world situation. So that's what's out here in those third-party websites. I'm not going to mention any because I don't feel like getting sued, but you guys know that there's a lot of third-party ones out there that could be very problematic. On the flip side of that are the ones that the lenders use. And primarily, lenders are using what is called the FICO scoring algorithm. FICO stands for Fair Isaac Corporation. They've been around the longest. They're the ones that have the monopoly on the industry, specifically in the mortgage world, but just overall, FICO seems to be the strongest ones out there. They have their own very specific proprietary algorithm. They use 7 years worth of data, which is what lenders are looking for. And their specific score range models go from 300 to 850. So that's really significant to understand that when you're trying to apply for any type of specific lending, mortgage world use specifically something called FICO Classic, which we'll talk about just in a moment. But the FICO score in itself is just a much better predictor of gathering the information that you would need in order to see, can I go out there and get myself qualified for some type of major financing? So hopefully that makes sense to a lot of people. Now, and again, if you have any questions about all this, please feel free to throw it in the chat. The most important one in terms of a mortgage side, and then I know we'll talk more about just the lending side in general, but all mortgage companies in the US, just so you guys understand, currently use something called FICO Classic. FICO Classic was developed in the year 2000, back when John Ulzheimer used to work there. That's how I know so much about it. And that is the one that, because Fannie and Freddie are currently using that scoring model, that's what all banks have to use that are eventually going to sell their loans to the Fannie and Freddie businesses. So because of that, that's the one that becomes most important. In order to see that information, there's only 2 ways to do it. Number one, you would go directly to a lender and have them pull a copy of the credit report to actually be able to see that FICO Classic scoring model. And again, it can be significantly different than these third-party websites. Or on the flip side of that, you could go directly to the source itself to see that information, called myfico.com. And I'll type that in here just so you guys, if you ever need to see it, it's called myfico.com. And this is the only legitimate website to use to give you the same information the bank uses, specifically on the mortgage side under the FICO Classic, but also understanding that there's different FICO scoring models besides FICO Classic. Okay, so FICO Classic, although it was developed in 2000, and that's what the mortgage companies use, a lot of the other lenders, such as auto, credit card, or just for like a bank for like some type of business loan, might use a different FICO scoring model, specifically known as FICO 8, which was developed in the year 2008, FICO 9, which was developed in 2014, or FICO version 10, which was developed in 2020. These are the newer versions that in some aspects of things are starting to get picked up by different companies and starting to, okay, I'm going to apply for this credit card. Oh, they're using FICO 9. Okay, well, look, I'm going to go apply for this business loan. Hey, look, they're using FICO 10, which takes into account something called trended data. So those are the different types of the FICO scores that are out there that lenders could also be using when you go and try to apply for a loan. Now, is it possible that they could be using a third-party application? Yes, but in general, if they are going to use a third-party application, they would use the main competitor to FICO, which is called Vantage. So the way I always describe it to people, because we live in the world of technology, is you have FICO is similar to Microsoft, whereas Vantage is kind of like Apple. So the two of them are kind of battling for supremacy, where right now FICO kind of has a stronghold, but Vantage is now starting to come up and become a lot more popular. So we actually have one little section here. I don't know how to turn on live transcript, so I'm going to leave that to Tim. But Tim, if you can turn on live transcript, we're being asked to do that. Okay, so to continue going down this path, right? So there's FICO scores, there's credit scores, there's a difference in terms of the scoring models and the data. And we just want to make sure that when we go and we apply for some type of loan, we really know and understand what they're currently trying to utilize to tell us where our scores are and if we can actually get ourselves qualified. Okay, so that's the first thing. If you guys have more specific questions about that, let me know. But I think it's just really important, again, to understand the differences between FICO and then Vantage and then really just random third-party websites. Okay, going in from that, because I don't see any other questions at the moment, we're going to dive right into what is it all about, right? What makes a FICO credit score? How does it work? And is it something that can or can't be figured out, if you will? And the short answer is absolutely can be figured out. It's really not as complicated as people make it think. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And again, after doing this for 14 years, I've heard stories over here and this and that and the other thing about, well, I was told about this and about here's 30% of my credit card and well, I got to use my full balance of my credit card and this, that, and the other thing. So I'm going to kind of give you a broad overview as to how the 5 components are built into the FICO scoring model. And then just kind of taking this information, again, Vantage is very similar into what we're going to be talking today. But again, those third-party websites can just really kind of be coming up with whatever they want to build in themselves. I am going to just address a question really quick. The question is, with different FICO scores used for different lending purposes, does managing finances for one purpose hurt the FICO score for another loan? The answer to that, Ron, is no, because in general, there are proper principles that if you do these things correctly, then you're going to have an 800 score, no matter if FICO Classic, FICO version 8, FICO version 9, FICO version 10, Vantage score. The principles that we're going to be talking about today, although I'm specifically talking about the FICO score, work with anything that you do. So if you do what I tell you in terms of past delinquencies, revolving debt, your average age, all of that gets applied across the board and all your scores are going to be super high. So you're not going to make your mortgage scores really high, but then not be able to qualify for an auto loan or something like that. So you don't have to worry about that. All this is information that's only going to help you across the board. So thank you for that question, Rob.
There was another question on how do the 3 credit bureaus fit into this score?
Sure, that's a great question. So here's what we have to understand about the credit bureaus. The 3 credit bureaus are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. what are the three credit bureaus? First of all, they're not government agencies, which a lot of people think they are. They're just businesses that have been around for a while. And in the grand scheme of what they really are, all they are is data warehouses. They are just simply collecting data from all the different creditors that you have out there, your mortgage loan, your credit cards, your auto loan, your student loans, your business loan, anything and everything that you could potentially be paying on a monthly basis through the major financing corporations are going to be sent out to the credit bureaus. Well, now what are the credit bureaus doing with that? They're just simply holding the data. So how does this all kind of work out? Well, what ends up happening is a company, whether it's FICO, whether it's Vantage, whether it's a third party, will just go in there and say, hey, we would like to buy data from Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, and thank you very much for the data. And by purchasing that data, they now take it and then put it into their own scoring model, their own algorithm, and then boom, it spits out your FICO score, classic 8, 9, or 10. It spits out a Vantage score, version 3 or 4. It spits out a third-party score. The data itself is simply the data, and that's all the credit bureaus are doing, is holding that data. It's what the actual companies do with that data in calculating it, and therefore creating the scoring model and saying, okay, this is what it looks like. And because of what your score looks like, this is, do we want to give you an approval or not? So yes, so that's how that works, Tim. To Rachel, yes, we can certainly give you a copy. But from my side, I would imagine Tim and Beth are fine with that as well. But yes, I will get Tim a copy of these slides and pass it out to everybody participating today. So thank you for your question there. Dun & Bradstreet. Dun & Bradstreet, by the way, are there. Here's another question. How does Dun & Bradstreet figure into the credit bureaus? Ultimately, they don't, because the Dun & Bradstreet is its own separate credit bureau aspect of things, right? So Dun & Bradstreet is the equivalent to FICO in the sense of it's creating its own scoring model based off of pulling data from the credit bureaus. So it doesn't figure into like acting like a credit bureau. It acts more like a FICO score. So it acts more like a third party that's pulling the data and then actually generating the score, if that makes sense. But the interesting thing about that is they're generally pulling from the business credit bureaus, right? So Dun & Bradstreet, like Equifax has its own like business section where you're building credit on the business side of things. So it's interesting because when you go and you try to get a home loan, a loan from like a bank, if you say, hey, I want to start a business, well, they're going to pull your personal credit report. And that's why it's so vital that we're talking about what we're talking about today. But that personal credit report is going to help dictate if you're going to get the loan and if you're going to get favorable aspects of that loan. The other side of that is they're going to look at your business history, transactional history as well, through something like Dun & Bradstreet, by Dun & Bradstreet going and pulling the data from the Equifax business section, which is specifically based off of what your business has currently been doing. So we, as business owners, we all have EINs, right? Employee identification numbers, which is our tax ID number. And that, whether it's an LLC, sole proprietorship, whatever it is, that information, when you open up a credit card, when you open up an auto loan, when you go lease under that business name, that's now creating its own transactional history through, for example, Equifax business credit bureau, right? Side of things, which whenever Dun & Bradstreet wants to, they can pull in that information, calculate it and say, hey, along with the Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion through FICO or Vantage or whatever it is, here's how this person looks. And then on the other side of it is, oh, we pulled it from Equifax business and now we're looking into Dun & Bradstreet. Well, here's how this side of it looks. And ultimately, all the things that I'm talking about today, again, across the board, are going to put you in good positions for each one of them, because even if the basic concepts of paying an account on time, paying your credit card, your business credit card on time, obviously get done. You got to get that done. Not maxing it out. Obviously, you want to make sure you're not maxing it out. Not having, like if you have an auto loan, making sure that's paid on time. Those type of things are all applicable in both aspects of things. The only difference, major difference is that these business accounts won't impact your credit on the personal side of things. So if you do have a credit card through the business and you go and you max it out, and then on the personal side of things, that credit card isn't taken into consideration because it's part of the business. So there is a good aspect of that because that separates the business from the personal. So if you go and apply for a mortgage and you have a max out credit card on your business, you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to impact your ability from a mortgage perspective to be able to do that. So that's kind of how that works. Hopefully that answered that question. And I do see one other question here in the Q&A. So let me just hop over there real quick, and then I'll dive into what makes up your FICO score. And I'm going to just kind of read through this here. I only have one consumer credit card. I opened in 2008 while I was in college. There's no business credit cards. My credit score, according to Chase Credit Journey, which isn't very accurate, is over 750 at the moment. If I wanted to incorporate two companies and assign a business credit card to each after opening my first business bank account for each, any recommendations in the situation? Is it timing related or otherwise to get my score over 850? Here's the long and short of that question, is that if your scores are over 760 in the consumer world, 750 is probably pretty fine as well, then you're doing pretty great, right? You don't have to be at an 820 to go and open up a business credit card and get the best pricing. The higher you are, the better. I'd say from an overall perspective on the consumer side, if you're over 760, 780, you're more than good. Even at 750, you're probably going to be quite well, and you're going to get approved, number one. That's not a question. And you should optimize your interest rate, meaning get the lowest interest rate. So you should be fine in doing that. Keep in mind, by the way, guys, when you apply for a credit card through the business, because you are the personal guarantor, you will be taking a hit for that credit card on the inquiry side of things. We'll talk more about inquiries in just a moment. So if you go and apply for a business credit card through your EIN because you opened up some business bank accounts, which, by the way, opening up bank accounts, whether it's business or personal, don't impact you in any capacity. So you're good there. But if you open up that credit card through the business, you're going to take a hit for the inquiry because you're the personal guarantor. But then once you open the card and it goes on the business credit report and you start using it and put a lot of debt on there, all that average age of the credit file and the revolving debt, which we're about to talk about, won't actually impact your personal credit at all. So that's how that works. So anonymous attendee, hopefully that answered your question, but I think the long and short of it is you should be perfectly good to go and apply for those cards right now. As long as you're not planning on doing any type of major purchases on the personal side of things, like a mortgage or an auto loan, because you are going to take a hit for those inquiries. Again, they're only 10% of our score, as you can see by the chart, but when you're trying to apply for some type of major financing, anything that's on there could be important. So, all right, great questions, guys. I love this stuff. So let's, I'm going to dive right into it then here with the what makes up your FICO credit score. As you can see, I just kind of go off of this chart. There's no further PowerPoint besides this, because this really is the crux of how credit works, specifically in the FICO world, but again, very applicable to Vantage or most regular scoring models, which is past delinquencies, paying your bills on time, revolving debt utilization, what are my credit card balances, the average age of the credit file, how long is my longevity there, my mix of credit, do I have a variety of things, and our inquiries, how much credit am I applying for? So I wanted to kind of dive into a couple of these so you guys understand how this process works and what are the good things to do, what are the things not to do, and all of that, okay? So 30, again, questions, throw them in the Q&A or the chat here. So if you, with past delinquencies being 35% of our score, what is that really saying? What it's really saying is it wants to see a variety, it wants to see the ability for you to be able to pay your different accounts on time and make sure that you're paying them in the correct manner also. Because I think there's a difference that people don't understand, especially now that we're getting more into trending data, that they say, well, as long as I pay all my bills on time, I should be good, right? Well, and with the trending data, specifically what underwriters are now starting to look at is not only do you pay your bills on time, but are you maxing out your credit cards as you're paying those on time? Because quite honestly, that's more of a risk factor. If you have somebody with $1,000 limit on a credit card and they put $50 a month on it and pay it off, versus if you have somebody with $1,000 limit on it and they max it out every month, which one as an overall is going to be riskier? Well, obviously the person that's maxing out their credit card all the time, sure, they pay it off and therefore they have no past delinquencies. But if they ever falter, meaning like say something happens and they can't make their payment and pay that off, all of a sudden the interest starts occurring, and then all of a sudden they have a new past delinquency. And then you from a risk perspective, it's just a lot riskier in that capacity. So how do past delinquencies work, right? You have your credit cards, you're paying it on time. All of a sudden something happens, you forgot to pay it, you went on vacation, you thought you paid it online. Their system was supposed to auto draft it. That's a big one I constantly hear. What ends up happening if you don't pay it within the first 30 days? Boom, you get your first 30-day late payment. When you get your first 30-day late payment, it can really wallop your score. And I'll give you this example because to me, this is just the epitome of how the system works, unfortunately. But I'll never forget it. It was January of 2020, prior to all the stuff we're going on right now in the world. And a gentleman called me. He had just gotten a new late payment on his mortgage. And he just opened a mortgage a few months ago. Something happened, the holidays, he forgot. This guy was a gentleman with some experience in his life. He had about 35 years, and he was a statistician, mathematician, something like that. He had like 35 years of overall history on his credit, and he ran his numbers, and it was 99.978% of the time over on all his payments were on time. This one new mortgage late payment that occurred because he simply forgot and something had happened in his life dropped his score over 100 points. So he went from around a 780 to, I think it was around a 665. And it was because of this one account. And he was livid and absolutely just couldn't understand how the system was and why it was like this. And I had to graciously explain to him that the system is not catered towards us as consumers that possibly could make a mistake here and there, but are really catered to if there is any type of negative late payment, especially if it's on a mortgage versus if it was on like a Macy's credit card or something, you can just see a significant drop in the score, number one. And number two, to resolve that issue can take a significant amount of time, considering that all negative information that pops up on your credit report can stay there if it's actually 100% valid and verifiable for 7 years from that time. And that just blows people's minds. So yeah, a late payment can really hit you. Late payments drop your score the most. I'm not sure if that's a statement or a question, but I'll go with this. Late payments themselves can absolutely hit your credit, but it can actually get much worse than that, because if you have that 30-day late payment and then you continue to not pay it, now it's going to go 60 days late. So you're going to get a secondary late payment on there. Then it's going to go 90 days late. Then it's going to go 120 days late. Then 150 days late. Then 180 days late is really where the rubber hits the road in terms of boom. It's just like it's sizzled your credit score here. And you went from that 780 down to like a 550 because now the account's going into charge off collection status and the debt is still owed. And let me just be very clear about that. A lot of people think, well, if the account got charged off, that means they don't want to collect the money anymore and I don't have to pay it, right? No, not at all. It just means they got tired of trying to wait for you to pay it. They're taking the tax hit and they're either trying to collect it internally as a charge off, or they've actually passed it off to an outside collection company. So that's kind of the progress of what can happen with your credit, where the late payment can start and see a significant drop there, but it's possible for it to continue to drop through that process all the way into a charge-off status. And then boom, they sell it to a collection company. Now, not only do you have the one account on your credit report, but a second account comes on your credit report as an open collection, collecting on behalf of that original creditor. And then your score goes down even more. So that's how you can, in the period of 6 to 12 months, based on your situation, you realistically could go from an 800 to a 500 by having a couple accounts that go late and or more importantly, go into charge off or collection status. The next step beyond that, more from a legal perspective and less about the credit world, would be if an account goes into a judgment status. Because if that collection company really wants their money and they're trying to reach out to you and they're not being able to connect with you, they're going to take that debt, they're going to get an attorney involved. And when the attorney gets involved, that's when they can take you to court. They can try to freeze your bank accounts. They can try to garnish your wages. They can try to put you into a forced payment plan. So all of that from a financial perspective really can become very problematic, because any of those things happening is just obviously not good. The interesting part to all of that is if an account does go to judgment, as of 2017, that judgment in itself won't actually report to your credit and impact your credit any further. Okay, so you might have the charge off. Now it got sold to a collection company. Now they sold it to an attorney's office. These two will impact you, but this judgment actually doesn't impact you because 2017, they decided that the credit bureau said, we don't think judgments are accurate, which I've looked at credit reports for years and I don't feel that that's a true statement. So I don't know where they came up with that. But long and short of it is, when it goes to judgment, it becomes a financial problem still, but doesn't actually impact the scores. And again, all of this is relative, because if you go and apply for that business loan and they pull your credit and say your business credit is great. Say you had 2 business credit cards and you had a van that you opened up through the business and all those are paid on time. Well, that's great, but they are going to pull your personal. If they see your personal is a mess, you're going to have a problem in terms of, are they even going to give you the loan? And if they are, they're going to take into consideration that, yeah, your business is here, but personally you're struggling, and they might hit you with a higher interest rate because of that. So that's kind of what you're dealing with there. Please turn the captions on. I don't know how to turn. Somebody just asked to turn the captions on. So Tim, if you're able to do that, that would be awesome, because I don't know how to do that. I'll just look real quick. Yeah, I don't know. So hopefully Tim can figure that one out, but sorry, we will work on getting that done for you. But I believe this is being recorded. I know I do talk fast. I get very passionate and excited about this topic and sharing this information. So if you ever need me to repeat something or clarify something, please feel free to, again, just throw it in either the chat or the Q&A and we'll make that happen. So that's that. Okay, so here we are, right? There you are, or if you know somebody, a client or what have you, that says, okay, well, yeah, you know what? I have this account. It had gone to collections. I hit a rough patch, especially the past year and a half. Things have been a bit of a mess for everybody. So what ends up happening if the account does go to charge off for collection? Well, now you're back on your feet. You're thinking, well, I want to resolve this debt. The biggest mistake people make is saying, well, okay, let me resolve this. I want to get it done as quickly as possible. I'm going to start calling up the companies and either negotiating a settlement and putting myself into a payment plan, or negotiating a settlement and trying to get it paid. But I'm trying to do it immediately, Steve. I really need to get this thing shown as soon as possible. Boom, here's my debit card. Let's just get this thing updated. If it's showing paid, it's got to be good, right? All of that, take all of that information, throw it right out the window. Okay, because here's what you need to understand, and this is what I see on a daily basis. Number one, you never want to put yourself into a payment plan with any type of open charge off or collection, or even a judgment, really. If you can prevent it from going to judgment, you want to take care of it. But if it does go to judgment and they're offering you a payment plan, if you financially have the capability to pay it in a one-time settlement, much better thing to do than putting yourself into the payment plan. So, but in general, number one, don't put yourself in a payment plan. Number two, when the debt is owed, you have to make sure that you're actually paying the right people, because I've seen companies that will buy debt. They'll literally buy it for a month, take it, sell it, and then still try to collect on it. And they're calling people, and they're not going to send you any documentation. They're not that dumb. They don't want to get caught in giving fraudulent documents, but they'll harass people and say, yeah, we owe you this and you better pay us. And people get panicked, and then they pay it over the phone. And now you've just thrown out a whole bunch of money out the window. So whenever there's any type of open charge off or collection debt, attaining a settlement letter in writing so you can actually understand who actually owns this debt is by far the most important thing. with that settlement letter, in terms of if you're paying in full or if you're actually trying to negotiate a settlement, have the dollar amount on there as well as a due date. Okay, if they send you a settlement letter dated for today, well, how are you going to make them a payment if they're sending it to you today, right? Well, that goes into, you never give out debit card, credit card, or checking account information. The only way to pay it is with a money order or a certified bank check. Well, why is that important? Why? Because you have to protect yourself financially. If you give them your debit card, credit card, or checking account, they now have your personal financial information. What are they going to do with that information? Well, they could do a lot of things with it. Number one, let's say they're a nice company, they take their money and they finish it off, you're good to go. But what if they're not the best company? So say you negotiate a $1,000 collection down to $400. You pay them over the phone for your $400, and then all of a sudden you look at your statement, they took out the full $1,000. I've seen it happen. The other thing is, what if they say, okay, fine, $1,000 debt, here's your settlement letter, fine, $400. They give the $400, they take the $400. You think you're okay. All of a sudden, unbeknownst to you, they take this information, they sell it to another collection company. This collection company calls, hi, we're calling you about this debt. Oh, no, I already paid them last month. Oh, so you're verifying it was your debt? Well, yeah, but I paid them. Thank you for the verification. Click. They're now going to go into the debit card you gave the first company, pull out the $1,000. Illegal? 100%. I don't know if we have any attorneys on the phone, or on this Zoom call, but if we do, I'm sure you're shaking your head being like, this is crazy. But unfortunately, I have seen this happen. Doesn't happen all the time, but it happens enough where why would you even put yourself in a position to allow your financial information to be out there? So don't do that, okay? Money order or certified bank check only. That way you're financially protected. And then once you actually get it paid, you still have the process of following up with the credit bureaus to get it showing paid and working with them to actually remove the negative data. All of this stuff, I can go into further detail if anybody has a specific situation. And because this is what I do for a living, I deal with these credit bureaus and these creditors. So if you have a specific situation, let me know, and I'd be happy to walk you through it. But this is just kind of good common advice. And I do see a question over here from Beth as well. If utility and medical bills go on your personal credit report. So in the example that I was just talking about, we were just talking about if you had a credit card that you had opened and now went delinquent and now eventually going to charge off or collection. But to Beth's point, if you have a utility bill or a medical bill, that could also go on your credit report. All of a sudden you're going along, things are great. You pay all your credit cards on time. You pay your mortgage on time. You pay your auto loan on time. You pay everything on time. And then all of a sudden you went to the doctor. They were supposed to send you a bill for your copay for $30. You forgot about it. You never got the bill. They didn't send it out. They waited their 30 days. They kicked it out to a collection company. All of a sudden, ABC collection company, medical bill, $30 copay. Boom. Your score tanks 80 points. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy, but that's the systems that we're dealing with right now. And that in itself could prevent you from going and getting approved for your business loan. Is one $30 medical bill that you didn't even know about. So you have to be very vigilant about making sure you're tracking and you're monitoring this. And that actually brings up a good point. Beth did ask me to mention this, and I'll go into this. Where I mentioned earlier, the myfico.com gives you the ability to see your 7-year history and your different FICO scoring models. The one caveat to myfico.com, although it doesn't count as an inquiry and it doesn't hurt your credit, so you can go there and look at it whenever you want, you do have to purchase it, okay? So you're purchasing it and paying directly to FICO, just like a mortgage company or a lender would be purchasing the information and using the algorithm, right? But if you just want to check your data and you're like, Steve, I'm not applying for anything. I just want to make sure, like you just said, these crazy medical bills aren't there or anything like that. So what do you do there? Annual credit report. Oops. Credit report.com. Annualcreditreport.com is where you can go for free, where you're going directly to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, the 3 credit bureaus. It does not count as an inquiry. It does not hurt your credit. And it's free for you to go and actually pull down your report. Hey, let me go check TransUnion. Let me go check Equifax. Let me go check Experian and make sure that nothing crazy has popped up and everything is reporting properly. And by the way, why did I just mention all 3? Because not every creditor reports to all 3 credit bureaus. So it's possible that that medical bill, you don't see it on TransUnion, you don't see it on Equifax, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's on Experian. And Experian is the only one that's taking the hit, but it's important to understand, because if you have an 800 and 800 and then a 600 because of a medical bill, you want to know about that and you want to get that corrected as soon as possible. Okay, so which creditors report payment obligations and which don't? So question here is, who actually reports the payment obligations? Most important thing to understand is nobody is legally obligated to actually report any of this information. Okay, they choose to report this information and they pay a fee to do it, to send it to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. The reason they're doing that is because they know that if you're held accountable, you're going to be more likely to pay your bills. And then if you ever want to do other things in the future, you need to make sure you're correcting any issues that you currently had in the past. So there's no defined answer, Joe, as to who's supposed to, but who generally does is your mortgages, your auto loans, your major credit cards, your student loans, all of those guys. But there are some credit card companies and credit unions I've seen only generally report to maybe one or even two credit bureaus. So a lot of times you'll have somebody says, oh, I just opened up a credit card to build positive credit history, and nothing against credit unions. They're absolutely fantastic, but sometimes they only report to one credit bureau. So you might be opening that new card, you're now building the credit at Experian, but it doesn't report to TransUnion or Equifax, and therefore you're not building the positive credit history there. Conversely, if you're late, now it's only hurting Experian, not TransUnion or Equifax. But that's the overview as to kind of how it works. And then in terms of, again, the collection companies, most of the major players, Portfolio Recovery, Midland Funding, whatever it is, they're going to report to all three credit bureaus because they really want to shake your tree and wake you up and make sure that you are noticing this, especially if you're using one of those third-party monitoring services. But it is possible that a small mom and pop shop collection company might only report to only Experian because they don't want to have to pay the extra fees to report to the other two credit bureaus. So that's why you want to look at all three. So hopefully that answers your question there, Joe. Yeah. Is one's credit score important to transactions other than lending? Well, yeah, absolutely. Ron, it's important to anything and everything in this world. I actually just moved and in moving, got new auto insurance. And as I was talking to my auto carrier, my new auto carrier, he was explaining, listen, we're going to pull your credit because if your credit isn't good, we're going to jack up your rate. So, I mean, that's a prime example where you're not specifically applying for a financing per se, but you are applying for a obligation that you're going to have. And if your credit's not in line with what their guidelines are, they'll give you your static rate. But if they don't like where you are, they might push that up. So the way that the insurance person explained to me, and again, maybe we have insurance people on here that could certainly chirp in, but basically he said is, well, this is what we give everybody. And if the credit's no good, their numbers are going up. And that, I think, right there is a good example. Of course, applying for jobs, I think we've all heard that, whether you're the person hiring or on the flip side of it, you're going and applying for a new job. On both sides of it, credit can become important because if you're in financial services and you pull somebody's credit and you see they're a mess, well, how are they possibly going to help other people with their finances if they can't help their own? And not for nothing, but doesn't that make it a little bit more like a liability that this person might do something not as ethical as he should or she should because they're struggling through the financial aspect of things? So I think there's situations like that where credit isn't defined as a financial aspect of things, but just an overall life. Like these are things that we're going and doing on a daily basis, and it can be very problematic. So these are great questions, everybody. So please just continue to have them come in. So, and I just want to make sure, oh my goodness, we're cruising through this time. See, this is what ends up happening. We have questions and we just kind of keep going with it. So let me just give you, because I do want to wrap this up in time. So, but I am going to hit each one of these. The next really important one that I do a lot of talking on is revolving debt utilization, right? Which means simply how much do I owe versus my credit limits. So if you have a limit of, if you have a credit card with a limit of $1,000 and you put a balance of $1,000 on there and you're waiting for the bill to come in the mail, and now you're paying that account off. When that bill gets and just so you guys understand, the credit card companies only update the credit bureaus one time per month. So when that bill comes to you, whatever that balance is, if it's $1,000 compared to your limit, you're going to do 100% utilization that month, which means your scores are taking a huge hit because you're maxed out in capacity. And I hear that all the time. Oh, Steve, yeah, I max out my credit card every month, but as soon as I get the bill, I pay it off in full. Well, yeah, but that you're always at 100% utilization, and that's holding your scores down. So what we really want to focus here on is making sure that, number one, we're not using that high utilization. And here's my overall statement to everybody is, I don't care if you have a $300 credit limit or a $30,000 credit limit. The best thing to do for your debt utilization, put 30 or 40 bucks in the card. Put a tank of gas, wait for the bill to come in the mail, pay it in full. That's the best thing you can do to build and establish your positive credit history. You're not getting bonus points for maxing out your credit card and paying it off. If anything, you're actually hurting yourself because, again, trending data is going to look at, are you more of a risk or not? So put 30 or 40 bucks on it, a tank of gas, wait for the bill to come in the mail, pay it off. By doing that, you're going to optimize your debt utilization, keeping in mind that when the FICO scoring algorithm looks at your scores, it's going to look at it as an overall as well as an individual. Just to explain how this works. If you have, and I'll give you, this is one of those things I love to do when I do my classes. So you're going to kind of have to go with me on this in your mind. But if you have 5 credit cards and each one has a $2,000 credit limit, what's our overall combined limits? Well, very simple math, $10,000, right? Not a big deal. Now, if I tell you, I want you to go out there and I want you to spend $2,000, what makes more sense, and more importantly, why? Is it better to take one of those cards, completely maxing out, leaving 4 cards at a zero balance, or is it better to put $400 on each of the 5 credit cards, leaving a nice, small, manageable balance? Now, obviously, I can't see everybody's answers, so mentally, you're going to have to raise your hand. Who thinks A, maxing out the card, okay, and who thinks B, putting it on the 5 cards? Well, if you pick this one, unfortunately, you're incorrect. Why? Because what ends up happening is, if you look at the whole point of the FICO scoring algorithm, and we've mentioned it a couple of times, it's trying to determine risk. Think of it this way. If you have 1 card that's maxed out and 4 cards at a zero balance, can you pay these 4 cards late? No, you don't owe any money. But if you have 5 cards, even though there's smaller balances on it, you're 5 times more the risk. A check gets lost in the mail, you forget to pay it, you thought your spouse was going to pay it, you went on vacation, whatever it is. From a risk perspective, very simplistic example, this is better than this. Crazy, right? Most people don't understand that's how the system works from a risk side of things. But the overall, in terms of your debt utilization, is always make sure you're keeping your balances as low as possible. What is a good percentage on your credit? So we'll talk about that in a minute. And the other big thing before I go into the percentages is everybody says, well, you know, I have these credit cards and I haven't used this card in a while. I don't like it anymore. I never go to that store. Why can't I just close it? I just want to close this card. I don't like this card anymore. No, do not close your cards. Here's why. Very simple example again. Ready? This card you have is a $1,000 limit and you happen to have a $1,000 balance on it. Okay, so it's maxed out right now. This is the card that has a $1,000 limit and a zero balance because you don't really use it much. And then one of 2 things happens. Number one, because you say, you know what, I don't want this card anymore, I'm going to close it. Or number 2, guess what? You haven't used it in about 6 to 12 months. The banks are looking to limit risk. So what are they going to do? They're going to close it on you. So either way, you close it or they close it, all of a sudden you go from this to this. And what just happened? Well, in this situation, what was our debt utilization? 0, 1,000, only 50%. All of a sudden, this card goes away. Now what's our utilization? 100%. What just happened to our score? Crazy, right? The simplest thing. Oh, why? Yeah, I'll just close it. It's not a big deal. Or I'll let them close it, whatever. That can hurt your credit in a major way. So you want to make sure that you're not letting those things happen. Okay, let's answer this question and then we'll dive into the last 3 things. The question was, what is a good percentage? Well, what did we just learn from that example? Number 1, 0. It's supposed to be a 0. 0 is best because 0 means you have a 0% debt utilization, best percentage, and you don't owe any money. So from a risk perspective, you can't pay it late. Okay. So from there, 1 to 15% would be tier level number 1. 15 to 30% would be tier level number 2. That's where that whole 30% thing comes in, right? 30 to 40%, 40 to 50%, 50 to 100%, and then lastly, 100% plus, because there are people that max out their credit cards and go above and beyond it, which really is a big no-no. Now, think of it this way though. If you're at 82% utilization and you pay it down to 55% utilization, is that going to help your credit? Absolutely. But Steve, you're still in the same bracket. I know, but any percentage you pay it down is definitely going to help you. Now, it wouldn't help you as much as if you dropped it down to 49%, because now you're in a lower bracket, a lower tier level, but it's still going to help you. Now, if you go down to 48%, that's great. It's even better, because now it's going to change how it's going to calculate your scores. If you go down to 29%, even better. You get under 15%, keep going, right? Go, 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 go. And again, you eventually want to get down to that 0, and you're paying that on a monthly basis. Is there a better time to pay before or after the closing date is the next question. And the answer to that is, if you're carrying a low balance, you're just waiting for the bill to come in the mail. So if you literally can put $30 on the card every month, wait for the bill to come in the mail and pay it in full, that's the best thing you should do. Because if you try to time it and you pay it before or after the closing date, blah, 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 it's too complicated. Something's going to trigger. You're going to forget you put a cup of coffee on there. You're not going to make your next payment. And then all of a sudden you're going to call me 30 days from now saying, Steve, I just got a new 30-day late payment because I tried to pay it off early and I forgot I did this, blah, blah, blah. Don't do it. All right. So the answer to that question is put $30 on it, wait for the bill to come in the mail, pay it in full. If you have a larger balance in that and you want to pay it down prior to the bill coming out, fine. But when the bill does come out, also make a payment then. So in that case, you're paying it twice. All right. So I have very little time and so much more to say. Average age of the credit file, 15% of our score, right? Basically, it's just looking for that longevity, because anytime you open up a new account, it's going to be impacting your credit. And by the way, believe it or not, the holidays are just around the corner. Don't be that person that goes and says, well, I want my 30% off at Macy's. I'm going to open up my card. I'm going to get my 30% off. I'll save a bunch of money. I'll close the card next month once I pay it off, and I'm good to go. No, you still took a hit for the inquiry. Yes, you took care of your debt utilization, but the card still remains, even though it's closed, as part of your average age of the credit file, and you just brought down that average age, right? Think of it this way. If you have nothing on your credit file except for one card and it's 10 years old, right now, 1 divided by 10 is 10. Now you say, and you don't do this whole Macy's thing. Okay, I'm going to drop this and I'm going to open up my card and get my percentage off and blah, blah, blah. You open up that card. Now you have 10 and one month, right? Divided together. Now your average age, just by opening up that one card in this very simple example, just went down to 5 years. Your scores just took a big hit. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that, because if you're constantly opening up new accounts, you're going to be hurting your credit. Now, the overall there is that, yes, you do need to have open active accounts. So if you only have one credit card right now, then yes, you may need to open up either a secured credit card or a regular credit card to continue to build and establish positive credit history. But until I see a credit report, I can't advise you what to do or what not to do. And for the person out there, somebody I know is scratching their head saying, but I have 10 credit cards and, you know, can I pay off some of them and close them out? The answer to that is no, not until I analyze a credit report to tell you if it's okay for you to do that. Which does bring us into the perfect mix of credit. And I will get to your question here about the equity line in just 1 second. The perfect mix of credit means that they want to see a variety of different types of loans. They want to see a mortgage, a home equity line of credit, 3 to 5 credit cards, car loan, student loans. So again, I have 10 credit cards. I'm going to go cut up 5. No, it's okay. Okay. Again, this is only 10% of our score. I only have 1 credit card. I'm going to go open up 4 more. No, let's take it a moment. Let's see exactly what you're doing, and also what you're looking to do in the future. Okay. And by the way, and I get this one all the time, but Steve, I'm done with school. I've been done with school for 20 years. Do I really have to go take out student loans to max out the perfect mix of credit to have an 800 score? Absolutely not. You can still have an amazing credit score and not have student loans. So don't worry about that. Last 10% is inquiries. Inquiries simply mean, are you constantly applying for things? Here's the really cool part about the FICO scoring model. You have a 30-day window to shop around specifically only for mortgages and auto loans. So if you went to an auto dealership this weekend because you're buying a new car and they pull your credit and they shop you around to 10 people, it doesn't matter. All 10 of them will be listed. It only impacts your credit once. And say you don't like any of those 10 offers. So next weekend you go to another one. And then later that week you go to another one. So in total, over the course of the next 3 weeks, you have 30 inquiries. Oh my God, my credit just dropped. No, you have a 30-day window. It all counts as one inquiry in terms of how it's going to impact your credit. So don't worry about it. You're good to go. Okay. So those are the components. I have very limited time, but I do want to answer these questions over here. So is an equity credit line lumped in with credit card payments, percentages, or mortgages? A home equity line of credit is supposed to be an installment loan, and therefore it is showing as an installment and therefore not a debt utilization. There are some that get coded as like it's a big credit card, and by doing that, it messes with your debt utilization. So if you have that access, and you'll see on your credit report, does it say installment or REV, revolving? If it says installment, it means you took out a home equity line of credit for $10,000, and for the next 3 years, you're going to pay about X amount of dollars a month until you pay it off. That's installment. That's how that works. Doesn't impact your debt utilization. The other one is, well, you opened up a HELOC. You have access to $20,000. Right now, you only owe, or let's say you max it out. Let's say you have $19,000 that you took out of it, but it's a revolving because you can constantly go in and out with it, in and out with it. So because of that, yes, will impact your overall debt utilization and not only impact your HELOC, but all your revolving debt, all your credit card things. Mortgages, auto loans, student loans, those are all installment. Those you don't have to worry about in terms of your debt utilization. Do I have an advice for people over 75? This might sound very silly, but I don't care if you're 75 or 35. Pay your bills on time. Keep your credit card balances low. Make sure you have open active accounts you're building positive credit with. I just had a client last week who for the past 10 years hasn't opened up anything. So right now he can't even qualify to get a score because he doesn't have any accounts that are open and active. So my advice is just keep your cards open and active and just make sure that you maintain it just in case you ever do need financing, because his rationale was, I was never going to buy a house. Well, now he wants to buy a house and he can't. So there you go. I'm trying to rebuild my credit, opened a few cards. Because of my credit score, my credit cards have a high interest rate. Am I hurting my overall credit score, my credit score overall? No, right? Because you need to have credit cards that are open and active in order for you to build and establish positive credit, right? That's okay. But keep in mind that I don't care if they give you a 55% interest rate. Why? Because you're only going to put $20 or $30 on every month. You're going to wait for the bill to come in the mail and you're going to pay it in full. Even at 55% interest on only $20, how much is it really? Like in the grand scheme of things, it's not much. So if you optimize and do what I'm telling you to do with how you're using your credit cards, then that's fine. And the fact that you did open up those cards, you took a hit for the inquiry, you lowered your average age of the credit file, that's okay. Sometimes you have to take one step back to take 5 steps forward, because after 6 to 12 months of on-time payments with those, Sharon, you're really going to start helping your credit build and go in the right direction. So there you go. All right.
Thanks, Stephen. I think that's all the time we have, actually.
I think so.
There's a lot of information there. Do you have contact information you can put up?
I certainly do. So if you have
other questions that we weren't able to address, or if you want to get copies of the slides, I would suggest you reach out to Stephen directly. This is Stephen's intellectual capital, and we normally don't distribute from SCORE to any of our attendees. Plus, a lot of our viewers actually watch the recordings, and we wouldn't know about them anyway. So if you need something, go right to Stephen, please. Okay, thank you. Please check out our website, fairfieldcounty.score, for information on upcoming webinars, and a recording of this webinar will be available shortly. Again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. We're available for sessions via phone, email, or video currently, and hope to be live someday. Also, please fill out your evaluations that will be sent at the end of the webinar. On behalf of SCORE, the Monroe Chamber of Commerce, and the Monroe Library, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's SCORE live webinar. In closing today, a big thank you to Stephen for presenting today. Have a nice rest of your day, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.